welcome everyone to the Colorado Department of Education's February webinar. This is sponsored by the Colorado Department of Education and hosted and coordinated by the SWAC program. SWAC stands for Statewide Assistive Technology Augmentative Alternative Communication. We have a real treat for you today. Our webinar is AI Can Do That, a NotebookLM adventure. But before we get started, I'm going to once again ask that people use that sign-in link and take just 1 minute and sign in. Our two presenters today came so highly recommended to us, like somebody, I wish I could remember who, just raved to me about this webinar and how transformative it would be for all of our folks who are providing assistive technology services. So without further ado, we have today Ryan Miller. He is a secondary social studies educator and technology coach. He is currently working as an educational technology coach in the Student Technology Services Department at Jefferson County Public Schools. He develops and delivers professional development. As I mentioned, this webinar, I'm sure, is just one of many. And he's also involved in a multitude of pilots and projects and partnerships across the district. He's passionate about integrating innovative educational tools that enrich the learning experience for both students and professionals. Elizabeth is an elementary school teacher and a digital teacher, librarian, technology coach. Her titles just kind of continuously run on here. Like, it's so impressive. She has a master's degree in elementary education and has received numerous endorsements, including special education, gifted and talented, and ESL. Both these phenomenal professionals are also Google certified educational trainers. I'll let you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop share and turn it over to Elizabeth and Ryan.
Great, thank you so much. Elizabeth, you can kind of do the introduction stuff while I pull up the slide deck. Perfect.
Thank you all for being here, and hopefully we'll make this fun and exciting for you for the end of your day. As Chris so lovely did such a great job introducing us, Ryan and I are the classroom experience designers for Jeffco Public Schools in the Ed Tech department. And of course, I'm elementary, he's high school. So we have dove into NotebookLM and Gemini, which are Google products that live in our Google EDU this year. And we've found some really great case uses for them and some ways that might save you some time and give you a little bit back and let you do some fun things that you enjoy. So we want to share that with you today. Ryan is going to present, and I will moderate the chat. So if you have questions, please throw them in there and I will answer along the way. And we're teachers, so we're used to being interrupted all the time. Don't even worry, don't wait, ask your questions as you have them. So, and I will make sure that the link is in there updated every, for a couple minutes to make sure everybody has access to the slide deck.
Okay, is the screen showing, Elizabeth?
You did a great job, it's perfect.
Oh, okay. So today we're talking about one of our tools that we use within Jeffco. It falls under Google's kind of AI tools, but it's by far our favorite of all of the AI tools that we use and support, and that's NotebookLM. We're going to give you guys just a little bit of background information initially. So we're going to kind of go over what we do with AI kind of in Jeffco, but real just high level stuff. Some possible use cases that might fit your jobs or your positions that you guys have, but also how we're starting to integrate it in with student use as well. So our guidance kind of in Jeffco, and I know each individual district has kind of their own take and their own level of comfort and use and what's allowed and what's not allowed within their district. So just think, if we're sharing something, it might not necessarily be approved yet for your district, or you might have to talk with an administrator or someone like that in order to get some of these features turned on. And if you need help with any of that stuff, please reach out to us. We've helped out, especially individuals in a number of different smaller districts, how to enable and set up some of the safeguards for some of these tools. So in Jeffco, we don't have a prescriptive kind of AI policy. We've instead set up kind of general guidelines for these are best use kind of recommendations, whether it's staff use or student use. And that still allows a lot of agency and freedom for individual teachers or individual schools to kind of set up their policies within that. So probably the biggest ones is using it as a helper or an aid, not actually replacing the learning, but to supplement the learning that's already being done. Make sure that we're using it in a respectful way or manner, that you're accountable and responsible for any work that's assisted by AI as far as accuracy and making sure that you're meeting copyright laws and things like that. Making sure that we're really cognizant of putting any sort of personal identifying information in it. And if that stuff is going in, it's in a protected walled garden. And AI, I'm sure, and a lot of you guys have found, is just changing so fast. So if this is something that you're including, you want to make sure that you're staying up to date and making sure that you're aware of any changes, especially if it's a platform that you're sharing with schools or teachers or students in some cases. In Jeffco, we have contracts with two different companies, Google being kind of the primary one that we see in schools, and then at the central level, Microsoft, and so they've got their own Copilot. Because we pay for these licenses and these contracts, we have walled gardens set up. So anything that a Jeffco employee puts into one of these AI chatbots or agents stays within Jeffco. So it means they're not selling it, they're not training on it, they're not using it for commercial purposes at all. This is huge, especially so you want to make sure whatever district that you're in, whatever tool it might be, if it's Google or stuff like that, that you have these security considerations kind of in mind. Because if you're not, then you're using one of the free or the open platforms. What we always tell both teachers and students, that if something's free, you are the product, right? They have the rights to use your data or sell your data. And so in that case, you would want to make sure no sort of like personal identifying information would be included in any sort of AI agent that you would be using. So when we talk about AI use for students or within the schools, our starting point for a lot of teachers and starting now with students is NotebookLM. So for us, NotebookLM is a Google product. So if our teachers or our staff or our students are signed in through their jeffcoschools.us, which is their Google account, they're immediately put into that walled garden, right? That we talked about the data protections and security constraints with this. NotebookLM, as well as Gemini, which is Google's AI primary chat agent, isn't automatically turned on for EDU accounts. So this is something that we set up with our Google administrator, and we talked about in our cabinet meetings and stuff like that. It wasn't like it just turned on magically. There was a lot of work behind the scenes that was done to make sure that we were doing this in kind of a responsible way. So when we talk about kind of use, we get the question from teachers all the time of like, well, what's Jeffco's AI policy? We don't have a specific AI policy. When we're talking about unethical or improper use of AI, it falls under basically our larger academic policy. It's just another tool. So we always kind of show them this of like, hey, there's already things in place. We don't need to create a new thing. It's just AI needs to be recognized within these pre-existing structures there. We've also generated kind of like an introductory lesson really around AI use and ethics of AI use. We did this last year and we piloted it with a couple of middle schools. It's called Let's Talk AI. So if you're in the slide deck and you click on this, it actually takes you to a separate slide deck that's got a facilitation guide. We're firm believers that, hey, we're happy to share anything that we make and produce. So if this is something that speaks to you, or you're wanting a starting point of how do you actually have the conversation with students about what is and what isn't okay to use within AI, feel free to use that, modify it, change or, highlight anything that would be useful for you. Basically, with the lesson, three main key points comes out of it. The first one being that AI is a supplement, not a substitute. So reinforcing kind of that concept for student use, that you're 100% responsible for any work that is AI used or assisted in, claiming that, hey, I've used AI for these purposes and this is kind of the outcome, rather than AI produced this and I'm claiming it's my own original work. And probably the most important one at the end is, within kind of our messaging, the teacher is still 100% responsible for determining in an individual classroom what is and isn't okay as far as any potential AI use. So we've kind of adopted this traffic light system. Those of you guys that have been kind of paying attention to AI, I'm sure you've seen this maybe in a couple of different locations, as a tool that teachers can use to start to have those discussions. So red would be, hey, for this assignment, it might be an entire class or it might be an entire unit. I don't expect any AI to be used, and that's okay, right? But you're clearly stating that. And then if a student was using something, an AI assistant, like when you said no, that is a violation of our kind of academic honesty policies. Green would be the opposite end of the spectrum, where you're actually encouraging or expecting them to use AI for something. So a good example of this, we actually had, it was an elementary school teacher that first showed us this, where they were creating poems, right? And so they did a whole poetry unit, and the students created these like really, really cool poems, not using AI to create the poems, but what they did is they used an AI image generator to then create a visual representation of those poems. And they use it as kind of almost an editor, right? And so the students would like see, hey, what did I write? What did AI kind of represent this as an image? Is this kind of accurate? Maybe I needed to tweak some stuff. As well as the kids just got like a huge kick out of just seeing kind of the visual representation of some of their written work. Yellow is where there's going to be kind of that maybe, right? And so a lot of teachers are in our district initially are kind of red until they have the conversation of potential yellow. And so we saw this after we generated the Let's Talk AI lesson, that teachers started to have some of the students come up to them and say, I know you said this was red, but could I potentially use AI for this? Maybe it's an image creation or something. And then the teacher's having the conversation with the student of saying, yeah, that sounds like an appropriate use, or no, I really want to make sure you're doing this, and so that wouldn't be an appropriate use. So it's kind of opening up that conversation. So up here at the top of the slide, there's a link to the original kind of stoplight documentation that can be printed out as a PDF, but feel free to use if you feel like this would be a good tool for your educators as well. Okay, let's get in the meat of the tool, the fun stuff here. So NotebookLM, as I mentioned, is a Google product. If you have an EDU Plus account or you have a contract with Google, it should be one of those things that's provided, but needs to be turned on by your system administrator. So if you're trying to access it through your school account and it's blocked or something like that, that's likely the roadblock that you're running into. Included, if you click on this icon here, it'll take you straight to NotebookLM. We also included a link to Google's kind of tutorial for it that has a bunch of question and answer and kind of shows you the different features of it, as well as there's a short kind of like how-to video here that you can do. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you some of the different pieces of the platform, how to use it, but then also some in-class or use cases that might be beneficial to your position as well. 504s and IEPs, yep, we can talk about that. We first did this with our Gifted and Talented program as well. And so modifying or kind of personalizing content for a student, whether they're on an ALP or an IEP or a 504, would definitely be one of those strengths or those leverage points I think that this platform could use. Okay, so to start with, typically with teachers, we have to explain to them kind of the difference between Gemini, which is kind of the open chat platform. Oops, sorry. Are there? And so Gemini is obviously the open chatbot forum, really good for generative AI, creating new content from scratch, helping maybe amplify some lessons or things like that. NotebookLM, you can think of it almost as a digital notebook. So I think of like the old school Trapper Keeper, right? Anything that I put in my Trapper Keeper, if I have it in a digital form, I can put it in a notebook, and then the AI agent is going to be pulling exclusively from that content. So it's a good starting point, or it's a good starting point for us for teachers, because oftentimes just the open Gemini platform can be a little bit too much or too overwhelming, right? You're looking at like the whole ocean, where NotebookLM, it's like your backyard pool, right? You're only going to be using the AI agent and those features of the sources or the content that you've given it access to. So when we look at the anatomy of NotebookLM, you can go to Google or notebookm.google.com, and that will take you to the open platform. Create a new notebook or start kind of privacy policies that you see there. But basically it has 3 different panels for a notebook. This far left panel will be the sources that you're going to add to the notebook. This middle portion is the agent, right? The AI agent that's interacting with the sources. And then this far right panel, the studio panel, is actually the studio. And so this is where kind of the magic happens, where you can create content and you can transform content in some really cool ways. I've included some different example resources across here on the bottom. The problem that you guys are going to have is you don't have access to it, because one of our safeguards within Jeffco is notebooks can only be shared within our domain. So if you're outside of our Jeffco thing, but I can kind of show you some different examples to it. So if you can't access NotebookLM through your school account, it's likely blocked on the administrator side. So that might need a help ticket or a service ticket to get access to it. Even if it's blocked from your school account, this is something that you can still probably access through a private or a personal Google account. So I've got both. I've got one that I use for work. That's our school account, and then I've got one that I use with a personal account as well. Within NotebookLM, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up one of my accounts here. So with NotebookLM, it's the first unit, it will just a new book. You guys on the screen?
Ryan, I think we're losing you a little.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's cutting in and out
You
a
hear me
little
now?
bit, but you sound better now.
Okay. Okay. I think it was just loading it up. So,
No, Brian, we're losing you. No.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's the first time you're using NotebookLM, it'll prompt you to start a new notebook. And when you're creating a new notebook, it will prompt you to load students initially to start with. I always close out this initial first window to me, the first thing that you should be doing when creating a notebook is naming the notebook. So I always close this first window to start with. You can name a notebook just by clicking up at the top. Call book, and then panels here, right? Our source panel, agent panel, and then the studio panel.
Hey, Ryan, can I interrupt you?
For most accounts that you have.
Hey, Ryan, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Every time you do anything, it cuts out. So can I share my screen and you talk so that maybe you won't break up?
Yep. Sounds good. All right, Elizabeth, we got your screen now.
You got it? Okay, let me pull up a notebook.
Yep.
LM file. And then
okay, so the initial screen I kind of close out. You can title your notebook up there at the top. The far left panel are going to be our sources. So the cool thing about NotebookLM is it can take lots of different types of sources at a given point in time. So if you click that Add Sources button, across the bottom there, Elizabeth, you want to close out the app Zoom? There you go. You've got a couple of different options. If you're working off a Windows device, you can upload files directly from your computer. Any sort of websites or YouTube links, it will pull any text. It will pull any text as long as the YouTube VIP has a transcript along with it, or any text off a website. Probably the most utilized one is the Drive button. So anything that you have in your Google Drive, whether it's a doc, a slide deck, sheets, even graphics like pictures and things like that, can be loaded into the notebook as a source. And you'll see as Elizabeth is adding those sources, it populates them on that left-hand panel there. You then have the flexibility in order to select or deselect as many sources as you would want within a particular notebook. So if I just had one of those sources selected, when I interact with the middle chatbot agent portion, it will just be pulling content or information from that particular source. If I'm asking it to do something and it doesn't have content within that source to do it, it will often just tell you, I don't have enough information to do that. So it basically kind of fact checks a lot of what you're actually asking it to do or what you're pulling it from. So in our position, in our job, oftentimes we get very lengthy PDF documents and things like that from other departments. It might be 36 pages long. We'll dump it into a NotebookLM and we might ask it to condense it, right? Put it in a different format, bullet point it. But you'll see as Elizabeth's scrolling down there, there's little numbers after each piece of content that it's producing. And that will show you where from those source or sources it is actually pulling that content from. So a couple of different uses. Typically when we're first showing educators or teachers this, we start by creating a notebook already for them and sharing it with them of something that they should have some familiarity with. So one of the more popular ones that we've done have been the contracts, right, that they have, the union contracts. So our teachers' contract and our administrators' contract, those things are, dozens and dozens of pages long, very technical and legal languages that are being used. And so it's a great way for teachers to interact by seeing kind of the different pieces of it before they're actually using it personally themselves or with students. So I might load up the teacher's contract and ask it a question about maternity or paternity leave, and it will give me the specifics out of that contract to do so. So some of the different examples that we've used, loading gifted and talented or IEP or 504 resources into a notebook. We did one where we were showing, say you have a student, they're on an IEP. So if I'm in a walled garden where that information is safe or protected, I could load that up there. And then I load an individual assignment in, right? And I ask it to rework the assignment with this student's accommodations or needs kind of in mind. So you're kind of melding the two together. Or students got a special interest in space, right? Can we tailor the assignment or some of the curriculum towards that? I, as a teacher, would load up all of my class content material into a notebook, and maybe I'd want like a check for understanding or a quiz or something like that. Well, if I'm creating it in NotebookLM, it's pulling from my content, my words, my examples, the things that I'm directly covering in class. If I was doing that just in Gemini, it would be pulling from all of its data sets, right? So it wouldn't have that same level of personalization or content connected with it. We've had teachers, or this actually came from a librarian that we had in the school. She created a NotebookLM for her entire staff that had all the important documents for the school. So like the leave absence form and the curriculum and the student handbook and all that sort of stuff. And it was almost like a resource hub where individuals could ask the notebook questions before directly having to call her and ask her, where is this? Or, you know, what was connected with that? So there's lots of different uses that you could create for you yourself as a professional. But we also have turned on NotebookLM and Gemini for basically 6th grade and above for our Jeffco students. So if you have that feature turned on, you can actually have a teacher create content within a notebook and actually share that with students. And they could either interact with the notebook or they could just consume the content or the material in there. So Elizabeth right now is in kind of the sharing settings. Right now, we have it set that we can only share it with people or groups within our organization. If you're in a private or a personal notebook, you have a greater expanse that you can add it. And within those sharing settings, you can make people a viewer or an editor. A viewer is they can only view the content in the notebook and interact with the chat bot feature in the middle portion. As an editor, they would be able to edit, either add or delete the sources on that left-hand panel, but also create the studio features on that right-hand panel there as well. So if you can also add groups, like if you have a Google group of teachers, or you have a classroom, a Google Classroom, you can add that all at one point in time. There is also, we have it integrated within our Google Classroom that NotebookLM shows up as an integrated feature as either creating materials, or you can add it as an assignment, an add-on to an assignment as well. So Elizabeth's going to pull up one of her classes right now. So if she was creating classwork and she was creating something right there, you'll see right there at the bottom, or kind of second to the bottom, is NotebookLM, or it's in the assignment feature. So I can link the notebook in as well. So let's talk about some kind of potential use cases for this. For me as a professional, I see it as kind of two different kind of branches you can go on. Initially, I would recommend teachers use it personally for themselves, right? Like you've got to know kind of the platform inside and out. So I might be loading content or material. Hey, I've got this reading and I want to level it up, or I want to level it down. I can do that within NotebookLM, and then I can create that content and push it out in a different medium. The studio tools to the right, I have the ability to create audio overviews. It won't come up through the audio options because we're virtual right now. But basically, it creates an AI generated podcast is the best way to describe it. But it will discuss or it will talk about content specifically of the source or the sources that you selected there to the right. So we do like a monthly newsletter, and we push it out in our traditional channels and things like that. But we've also started creating an audio overview of that newsletter. And we've actually gotten a lot of feedback that people are way more willing to consume a 5-minute little podcast of that rather than read, the 1 or the 2 page with the links of the newsletter in that. Anything that has a little kind of pencil in the corner, you also have the ability to kind of customize those different studio options. So if it's an audio overview or something like that, you can say, hey, do I want it shorter? Do I want it longer? Do I want it, do I want more? Do I want less? Do I want it to focus on specific topics? So this is one of the things that we've still really seen grown over the last year and a half with NotebookLM. Like every 2 or 3 weeks, we're just seeing better features being added, right? And it used to only be in English. Now you can put them in multiple languages. So I want to create an audio overview, but I want it in French. And all this is then exportable as an MP3 or an MP4 player as well. So you've got the audio overview options. You've got the same thing with the video overview, similar podcast, but it puts kind of pre-created graphics or slides to back up the visualization. It's pretty consistent with kind of the template that it uses, and you can't edit individual graphics within that video overview. The mind map is a visual representation. Kind of think of it as like a hierarchical chart where it will pull out key concepts or ideas, but things that nest within it. She's showing you right now the infographic. So she just created this in the time that we've been talking here. So this is an infographic about Notebook, about our presentation here. So a really good way to transform content or material into more of a little bit easier to consume or interactive mode there. You have flashcards and quizzes. Those would be more student-facing content or material where you would customize a notebook and you would share that out. So questions coming in, let me address these as they're kind of coming in. Does it take a long time to upload a 1-page PDF? It shouldn't. PDFs should be pretty quick, so that might be a refresh thing that you want to do. Accuracy of decoding, typeface on PDF documents like handwriting, extremely good. As a large language model, we've had it not just PDFs, taking a picture of student work. It can read the handwriting exceptionally well off of that. Could a student go in and ask for more information if they happen to be interested in a certain topic or concept? Yeah, so the couple of different options, we showed you loading content that you already have. You'll see in that sources option, there's also a web option. So this would be an opportunity for you or a student or whoever to explore more off a concept. So maybe I had 3 resources I wanted to load into my notebook. But now I wanted to expand and I wanted to open up into other resources. That would be a good option to select there. You can lower it at a reading level. So, hey, level it at this Lexile level, or provide me an extension for students that might finish early, or I need to make sure I have this accessibility feature added in for this assignment. And it will kind of rework some of that stuff. The infographics has images. Where do these images come from? Do these images have alt text? Fantastic question. So the images come from Gemini, kind of their Google database as far as AI assisted images. The image comes out as a single image that doesn't have alt text initially to start with. That doesn't mean that you couldn't create or you couldn't put the alt text on the back end of that, but unfortunately right now, the alt text just shows up as image. Yeah, great question there. So especially transformative, I'd say, with the different kind of like studio options there. But I would start kind of individually as like a teacher, right? How can I use this for my job, my position, kind of reworking some of my content before I would actually be pushing notebooks out to students, as well as your organization would need to have that turned on for students. We only turned it on just this last fall, I think October is when we gave access, and we had a lot of training and stuff like that for staff members before we even made that an option for students as well. They just recently added data tables, right? So being able to analyze data tables and some of those things as well as part of the notebooks. But it seems like every 2 to 3 weeks, we're seeing a new feature, right? We're seeing something. So something that initially started out kind of just as like a Google product, I think they've realized is now kind of one of their flagship products that they're starting to put a lot of research and investment into as well. Elizabeth, am I missing anything from kind of the sources?
No, you definitely covered it. I would just go back on every week there's a new feature. And so for, when you're looking at these and you're going to edit here, always look because the editing is getting more granular and more specific so you can control your outputs better. So I didn't model this well, but before you start, always go into the pencil so that you can get a better output on the studio version, on the studio side.
Yeah. So use cases. We've had some questions come around as far as like assisting with like grading. Ugh, kind of gray area, right? Did some exploration. I actually did it with an AP teacher in our district where we loaded the AP rubric for an English class. It was for a particular essay into NotebookLM, and we loaded a student source or sample. And it was a handwritten example back to someone questioned, can it read, student handwriting? And we asked to score it, right? So score this essay based on the rubric, and it did. And me and the English teacher kind of looked at each other and kind of like, this doesn't feel right? This feels kind of icky. It was fairly close to what she would have scored it, but it's taking kind of that human element out of it. So she's like, this doesn't feel right to me. I'm like, me neither, right? So you got to kind of trust your gut with different things. But then we kind of refined it a little bit. She's like, okay, like I feel like the grading still has to live with me. I was like, 100% agree with you. But what she did, or the change that she made, is she was going through and she was scoring her essays through, but she was then loading them into NotebookLM, and she was asking for basically feedback, right, on the essay based upon the rubric. So score was still her, but when she asked for like the feedback based upon the scores and some of the annotations or the marks, just quick marks that she made on the paper, she found that the feedback that it gave on an individual paper was fantastic. It was really clear. It was pointed to the different parts of the rubric. And she's like, I would feel comfortable taking some of these feedback elements and sharing that with the students. So a little bit of kind of the hybrid of the work. She said it decreased the time she was taking in getting that feedback to the students by like a fifth. So like she was able to focus more on the grading elements, the feedback. She was making sure that she concurred with some of the feedback it was generating, but getting that back to the students in like a day or two, and then having those kind of like conversations about continuing to improve like pieces of the work. So could it do things like that? Yes, but I think that's where you kind of have to use your best judgment as an educator of what would be appropriate and what's right. And I'm always a proponent of just being transparent, right? So making sure you're 100% transparent with what you're doing, as well as like the students, like, hey, I've graded your essays. I used this, tool to generate some feedback. You want to discuss some of this with me? I'm still here as the person to kind of continue that conversation as well. So do students are accessing the chatbot? Do they still need read and write to access speech to text in the notebook button? They should, right? So that should be a feature that can be added on top of it. So you have a couple of different options when you're sharing it with the students. If the students is a viewer, right? They can view all the different pieces of the notebook. So if you've created stuff in the studio panel, they would be able to view those things that you've created. There's also an option when you're sharing it to just allow the chat only option. So in that case, they wouldn't be able to see anything in the studio panel. They would just be interacting with the chat feature, and they wouldn't be able to toggle the sources on and off as well. Other questions about the different pieces or the different panels within NotebookLM? And we can kind of show you guys a couple of different notebooks that we've kind of interacted with or helped create. In a second. All right, Elizabeth, if you click on the little NotebookLM icon in the, if you go back to the notebook. Okay, so when you're in a notebook, the limitations for most basic accounts is each notebook can hold up to 50 sources within a notebook, and each of those sources can have up to 500,000 characters or words. So you can load a whole lot of content into the notebooks. When you're out of the notebook, so the view that she's in right now, think of that as like your file cabinet. So this is where all of your notebooks are going to be stored. For most basic accounts, you can have up to 50 sources in a notebook, and you can have up to 100 notebooks at a given time, but you have the ability to edit or delete notebooks off as needed. She's in a list view right now, so you can sort it by kind of the list. If you go to the top, Elizabeth, most recent, you can do it alphabetically, or you can be in this tile view. I like the tile view better. But again, you can sort it by recent or title. If you're wanting to sort it, because it is hierarchical, obviously alphabetical, but you can also number. So if I put a 1 and then did the name of the notebook and I did the sort by alphabetical, that would be the first thing that shows up there. It will show you all of your notebooks that you're the owner of or that you've created. But you can also show notebooks that have been shared with you as one of those options across the top there. So let's take a look at maybe one of the notebooks that you've got there that would be relevant. Elizabeth, you want to scroll and find one?
Yep. Let's see here. The one that teachers like the most is the STEM collection. It's a bunch of STEM lessons that we have come up with collectively between a bunch of STEM teachers. And so as you can see, quite a bit of people have added here. And if you look here, I mean, there's a ton of people in this notebook. And we've made quite a bit of things out of this notebook. And it was just but there are not many elementary STEM teachers, and we're all pretty isolated. So this has enabled us to share lessons and work more closely and not so much in silos. So this one has been super helpful. What would you like me to show in this one, Ryan?
Yeah, just I think you highlighted that it just can be used as a collaborative tool as well, right? So especially if you're collaborating with people across schools, or you've got different planning periods and stuff like that, that this is a place that you can house collective resources, but also content being created. If I'm looking at a classroom use of this, if I was in the classroom right now and I was sharing a notebook with students, the first notebook I would share with students would just have all of my class logistics in it, right? My syllabus, my class calendar, those types of things. So you get that kid that's like, well, when's this due, right? Or, I'm going to be gone the week of blank and blank. If you have that stuff updated, within the notebook, they can use that chat agent or the feature to find some of that content or the answers. This works really well, again, with like school board policies and documents and things like that, that especially are lengthy to read. So that was kind of one of our hot tips, is kind of creating a, if you have the ability to share it with students, kind of a master notebook for your class. We're also having teachers create kind of review content or materials for students. So one of the early teachers that I worked with was loading her content into a notebook. She would create a traditional review guide, but she started creating an audio overview as a review for each unit of study for these AP Bio kids that and she said she had fantastic results, right? That kids nowadays, they're just consuming content, especially if it's in a media form, differently than our generation. And so she's like, yeah, kids like that were listening to the review of our unit while they're getting ready in the morning or in the shower or driving to school and things like that. And she said she saw immediate kind of returns as far as providing different options for students basically to consume the same content. If you do have access to share this with students and you want like more specifics of how do I add this to Google Classrooms and stuff like that, feel free to reach out to one of us, and we'd be happy to kind of walk you through kind of best practices there. But we wanted to give you guys some time to explore this kind of on your own, and us to be here to help support or answer questions. There's a slide in our presentation that's got some worthwhile uses for like the student use. So the audio overview was one of them, using it as like a fact checker based on your kind of like citations or resources that you're putting in there. Frequently asked questions, right? So maybe you've got a chapter of a textbook that you've loaded up and you're creating your own kind of customized study guide, or you want to turn it into flashcards as like a review stuff, because you can take a lot of content that maybe isn't the most exciting or the most engaging thing and transform it in that studio feature to kind of engage students more. Is what we are seeing the same thing students would see if they open up a new book assigned to them in Google Classroom. Based upon the settings, yes, right? And so they would still have the 3 panels unless you were just giving them the chat only option. The other difference that you would see is if you made them just a viewer. If you made them a viewer, they wouldn't be able to change anything on the right or the left-hand panels, but they'd still be able to access it. If they were an editor, they would have the ability to add documents or resources on that left panel, but they would also be able to create things in that studio panel to the right. Great question. Any other questions that we've got here before we give you guys a little bit of time to explore and think of some possible use cases yourself? Math concepts, yep. So it will read like math concepts like an equation, just like it would like a picture. What we found is like the output, it doesn't have that great, like, especially for like more advanced math classes, like a calculus class or stuff like that. You're not going to see a perfectly written equation, but it can read all that stuff. It just can't replicate it as far as its output in the same format. We've had a number of teachers, especially math teachers, now that you bring it up or I think about it, using it. They've written all over their whiteboard and stuff like that. Take a picture of it, right? And they're saving that as a resource that they can then add and interact with into the notebook. IEP writing, right? And so this would be one of those things. I would go back to kind of those core beliefs, right? It's using to supplement, not substitute, right? So maybe you're adding in elements of the student's IEP and you're asking it for advice or suggestions or things like that, not just write this student's IEP like for me. But because we're in that walled garden, we have put IEP and 504 information in a notebook for special providers and things like that, especially with kind of extensions, right, or modifications that would help out the student. But think of it as like a great thought partner, right? Hey, I've got this IEP. What might be some additional things that might assist this student? But you still have to be the ultimate evaluator of, hey, would this be something that would be worthwhile to add to that? Not have it do it for you. Good question. Other questions, or can you guys think of some possible use cases either in your current positions or interactions with students that this tool might become useful for? Multiple disabilities. So I think it depends upon what the disability might be. Like if I'm thinking of someone that might have a visual impairment or something, to me, hey, the audio overview, right, kicks into that as far as another way to be able to process or connect with content. NotebookLM does have like some limitations, so there might be some things where it's like it's not quite getting to where I want it to be at in NotebookLM. If that's the case, I would recommend kicking it into the larger AI platform Gemini. That's got a little bit more granular control of being able to go deeper, especially when we're talking about accommodations for some type of disability. Or do you have like a specific example of a disability that you might be thinking of? So while we're kind of on this thread, nonverbal. Yeah, so to me, that might be a better use for the greater Gemini platform. So Elizabeth, you go back to Gemini there. Within Gemini, so this is another one of the Google kind of products there. With under the chat, there's kind of this button that says Tools. So within that Tools, the very last button, and again, this might depend upon what your organizations have allowed, is this Canvas button. The Canvas button, very similar to NotebookLM, that you can add content and add sources based on that little plus button there. But what Canvas will do is it will kick it into a separate side panel and allow you to edit or iterate whatever you're asking the agent to do in like kind of real time. So like, yeah, you can add whatever resource, create me a study guide or something like that. Yeah. So when you have that Canvas button or feature on, it acts as like, it's the best way to think of like a true like thought partner. So you'll see when Elizabeth kind of kicks this off, it's going to open up a completely separate side panel of the chat, and you can iterate kind of within the chat without having to redo the product from start. So this would be good, especially I think with those like support needs, right? You kind of get the ball rolling and it's like, nope, I want to take this piece out, or I want to add, this sentence here. I want to make sure I specifically call this out, and all this then is like exportable. So you'll see the separate side panel here. Anything that's on that side panel to the right, she can edit directly herself. So if she didn't like the title there, drafting technology or any of that, she can make the edits directly in that Canvas version, interacting with the AI chatbot there. So you just kind of have to determine which tool is going to best fit your needs. NotebookLM is really great if you're using a multitude of resources all at once. If you're just using or you're modifying a single resource, the Gemini and the Canvas tool option might be better. So you still have the ability to create infographics. You can export this directly to docs as well. So as a coach, I think this would be great for creating quick guides, troubleshooting, programming. Yep. We had our help desk team We did a NotebookLM training for them, and they started loading their user manuals in there, right? So the FSIM projector, this model and that model. And so when they're getting help tickets in, it was basically pulling that information directly from those sources or those manuals. The infographics, one of my favorite one, especially for the multi-language learners. So you can translate that into different languages. Love that use there. Yeah, infographics pulling from CDE requirements, special education teams. Yep, awesome.
Hey, Ryan, can we go back to using
Yep,
this with instructional coaches?
yep,
Um, this has been wildly successful when we go to professional learning communities or team meetings or staff meetings where the coach is internalizing content, and we upload the content in here and use the chatbot in the middle to the AI agent in the middle to help teachers prioritize and make decisions moving forward. So we upload student data to help teachers go back and decide what they need to reteach and move forward. NotebookLM is very successful for coaches to use.
yeah. So question came in about editing infographics, not directly. So every time you're creating the infographic, it's recreating the content each time. You can give it like suggestions, like, oh, try to replace this with this, but it's very delicate as far as being able. You can't directly edit text or things like that within an infographic. So when she's in the Canvas mode right now, she's having it create an infographic. All it's doing is it's creating the code. So all that stuff right now is just code, and the code is actually, there will be a visual representation of that. So yeah, you can be basically an advanced coder of creating these graphics and images and stuff like that with knowing nothing about code. But it'll always give you a preview option up there at the top once it's finished kind of doing that stuff. All right, we've got just a couple minutes left here. I appreciate everyone joining. I know that's like a fire hose right at you with the amount of content. Elizabeth and I are always open to individual support. So if you've got a question or something like that, feel free to shoot us an email, or we can find some time to jump on an individual call. Always happy to help support other educators, especially kind of within our state here. So yeah, thank you again for taking your time this afternoon and joining us. Feel free to use anything that might be in that slide deck for your own sources or materials as well. We'll hang on just a couple minutes here if you've got individual questions.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, Ryan. This has been so great. I've been crazy writing notes on all the different things that I'm gonna try and create here. This is great information.
Yeah, Eric Curtis, we had him out as one of our keynote speakers, right? And so he's big as part of this tool as well. So there's some great resources online as well, and some YouTube clips if you're like, this started that itch and you want to keep going. It's definitely personally my favorite AI tool that's in the market right now. So take that for what it's worth.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experiences and all the different ways that you're using the tool. I can tell it's just inspired all kinds of ideas.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any last questions? Right. Well, thank you once again.
Awesome.
And
yeah, we're always here to support. So if you guys have any needs or anything in the future, don't hesitate to reach out.
We sure will. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close our meeting.